actually experienced more than just what it's like to be wrongfully convicted. I experienced what it's like to be kidnapped. I kind of just checked out at that point because I knew what it was going to be. Busloads of people started showing up. They were holding up banners saying, "Aquí se va a hacer justicia," "Bring out the gringo," sticks, machetes. One of my close friends was out there in the crowd and she called and she's like, "Hey, there's somebody with a pistol like standing next to the door." The court staff was scared to leave. I was wearing a bulletproof vest because there had been so many death threats, and one of the cops got a phone call and he's like, "We're going." They opened the door, pushed me out and said, "Run down and get in the back of that pickup truck." Crowd now sees, and I'm a fast runner. I ran down to the corner and made eye contact with the driver through the rearview mirror. And as soon as we made eye contact, he hit the gas and sped away. All of space-time history just went. I didn't get in. All I remember was somebody yanking my right elbow saying, "Corre, run." And my dad, he'll describe the last thing he saw was me turning a corner and hundreds of an angry lynch mob running after me. And ended up like kicking open a door and getting into this room, and I just ran to the back of the room. It was a dead end. There's a bunch of, firearms being shot at this point. One of the main policemen comes running in, bloodied face. We start trying to barricade our stuff in the room. He's on the phone screaming, "Get the president on the phone. If you guys don't get us out of here, we're not gonna make it." And then I ended up kicking through the wall, was able to peel away some of the wood, and me and him squeezed through this hole that we made in the wall.
Yeah.
It opened up into a gymnasium.
You're waiting in this gymnasium. How do you get out of that? What happened from there?
Baby, don't you know I'm a real soul shaker?
Welcome to another episode of the Soul Shaker podcast. My name's TJ O'Donnell, and this channel exists to connect with the heart and soul of real people and real life issues. So glad you're here. And as always, at my right hand, my good buddy and amazing producer, Mike Scafidi. Hi, Mike.
Hello.
See, one day I'm going to get him on this camera. It's going to happen, Angela. Just letting you know. Today, he's probably not going to do that, but I'm glad you guys are here. We've officially been a podcast for just over a month now, and I just can't thank you guys enough for, all the love and support. I never thought I'd be doing this, but we're closing in now on 1,000 subscribers, and I think we're right at 744, something like that. But if you would do me a huge favor, like, subscribe, share this content. It truly means the world to me. I really, really, really appreciate it. Now, extremely excited about today's episode because I have a very special guest with me in studio. He's really one of the most uniquely gifted people I think I've ever met, and a really good friend of mine. He's an internationally recognized crisis management expert that has one of the wildest true stories you'll ever hear. I mean, my story's crazy, but I think his probably even trumps mine. In 2006, he was wrongfully imprisoned in Nicaragua by former communist leader Daniel Ortega and survived brutal conditions. Was later exonerated in one of Latin America's most high-profile international legal cases. His memoir, Gringo Nightmare, recounts the ordeal, serves as a guide for really surviving and overcoming. He's fluent in Spanish and deeply connected in Latin America. He's been featured in the New York Times, on CNN, NPR, and really has managed some of the world's most politically sensitive show trials in recent history. So, without further ado, it's my honor to welcome my good friend, Eric Voles.
Mi hermano.
What's happening, man?
Mexican Americans in the house.
Simon, that's right. We're both half-breeds, right?
Yeah.
And
We instantly connected over that when we met.
yeah, so it's like
California Mexicans.
we've both been to prison.
Yep,
We're both half-breed Mexicans. How can we not connect?
that's right.
I mean, yours was a little more crazy than mine.
Yeah,
though.
well, you can say that.
And I think I
Extraordinary.
probably deserved mine. You really didn't. So
There you go.
there's some nuances there.
Yeah.
Man, there's so much, bro, to talk about. I think it's amazing the way we met, though. Here in Nashville now, I have been experiencing one of the greatest just communities. Man, 30 years of serving the Lord. I've never really had intimate, deep, close relationships. And it really took God bringing me here to have that. But when one of my good friends texted me and he said, TJ, meet Eric. Eric, meet TJ. You need to meet. And I'm just like, okay, what's up, Eric? Where do we meet? You're like, let's meet for lunch.
Let's meet for lunch.
Where at? You're
That's
like,
right.
some crazy, I don't know, place.
Yeah.
Where
Hole in the wall. I like the hole in the wall. I like the hole in the walls. Yeah.
It was good.
Yeah.
It was good.
I got some spots.
Yeah. And I just, man, just being in a relationship with you, I'll tell you, one of the things that I think about when I hang out with you is like, I always want to level up when I'm with you. You've done so many great things, man. You've been in so many crazy situations. I don't think people realize, like, and I know you haven't really been in the spotlight for many years and stuff, but,
Yeah.
and there was a time where, you know, you were all in the spotlight and all that. I don't think people really realize what you do, how amazing it is, how crazy it is.
Yeah.
They might see you on camera nowadays or whatever and not really know you as a person.
Sure.
So I just want to tell you, man, I'm really grateful to know you personally. And no matter what the circumstances are, I'll tell the world you're my friend and I'm down for my friend.
That's what's up.
And that's what's up.
That's what's up. That's what's up, bro. Thank you.
Yeah. So, you know, I don't want to talk too much, but I want you to talk a lot because you have so many things to share. And I thought maybe we could just start with, you know, maybe your testimony. Just tell us a little bit about just your background, some of the crazy stuff you went through, and then we'll just kind of go from there.
Yeah. No, I mean, I know we kind of say it jokingly, like, you know, Mexican-American brothers, but, you know, I really grew up similarly to you. My mother's Mexican.
Right.
She was born in Arizona on the border, you know, but I grew up with Spanish-speaking grandparents, you know, cousins and aunts, and I get yelled at in Spanish. And so I never felt like I was 100% Mexican because I wasn't, but I also never felt like I was 100% like gringo.
It's a weird place to be, kind of.
And later, you know, I learned that that's called, you know, between two worlds. And in Spanish, there's actually a phrase, entre dos mundos.
Wow.
And so, you know, I really kind of grew up with this. It was a bit of like, I mean, I had a great, I would say, youth and childhood, but there was something in my identity that wasn't really, I didn't really fully understand it until I became, you know, a young adult, went to school, and actually moved to Southern California. I was born in Northern California, and I was down there with my Mexican grandmother and started really getting into photography and filmmaking and was fascinated with the border, the U.S.-Mexico border.
Yeah.
And I didn't realize it then, but it was almost like there was something like I needed to understand the border to really understand myself.
Wow.
And so I said, you know, I would go across the line, they called it, you know, and I started building friendships in Mexico and in Tijuana. And you know, that was the first time I ever really got introduced to.
Now, were you speaking Spanish at that time? Like, were you pretty fluent at that time?
Yeah. So I grew up what's called receptively bilingual. So, you know, I had like a basic understanding of Spanish, but I only responded in English. My parents spoke English.
Right.
You know, I was shy about it. I was embarrassed. I never really thought about it, to be honest.
Right.
And it wasn't until, you know, I got into college that, and, you know, probably late in high school, actually. And I kind of started to be like, oh, I'm actually good at Spanish. And it was naturally inside me. So, but I didn't start speaking Spanish until, you know, high school.
So at the border.
Yeah. So I just, you know, I started going down there and just realizing how comfortable I was outside of the US. And it was almost like I was missing something that I had never known.
Right.
But it was like, I'm home, you know? And I realized a lot of people actually have that experience, you know, like you. And so when you meet another, you know, Chicano or Mexican American, there's sort of some common ground there. Yeah. But it was really when you know, spending time specifically in Tijuana that like I really started to have my eyes opened to the way the world really works. And I started to just, you know, I grew up in doing a lot of outdoor sports and rock climbing, which is an amazing whole other sort of testimony in and of itself. And I really advanced in that sport and like took it to the edge, climbed semi-professionally. But it got to the point where kind of hanging off the side of a mountain just didn't really have the same sort of purpose as being out in the world and just the kind of people I was meeting
Right.
and sacrificing their life and freedom for, you know, social change and stuff like that. So, yeah, I made my first documentary in college. It was called Destiny.
Okay.
And it was actually about a surfer. He was actually a gang member from the Caribbean side of Panama.
Okay.
There's this really amazing part of Panama on the Atlantic side called Bocas del Toro. And it's like a little mini Indonesia. There's all these islands, micro islands, and there's like, you know, amazing waves,
Right.
really good surf. I was really into surfing, you know, being a Californian.
Yeah.
And I met this kid named Felipe. And he had come out of like really hardcore sort of gang life and found surfing. And it
Okay.
saved his life. And,
Wow.
you know, it was just, so that's what the documentary was about. It was called Destiny.
Okay.
And, man, I was hooked on filmmaking. So I started traveling all over Latin America, you know, making I was doing all kinds of stuff, and eventually found my way to Guatemala. And I was following around a former communist guerrilla commander, like in the jungles of Guatemala. And he was running for president.
Wow.
And I was by myself. It was me, like his security team, and I was just doing
And
this
how
follow
long
doc.
after college was this like?
This was during college.
Oh, this is during college.
Yeah,
you're
yeah.
doing this stuff.
Yeah, I mean, people like I've never been to Las Vegas. Like people would do the party stuff during the semester breaks, and I was like packing my bags to go,
That's crazy.
rock around and learn. And so that just came naturally to me. You
Yeah.
know, that was just kind of my path. And again, I think I just had to like sort of understand something about that world to really fully understand who I was.
Yeah.
And later learned about who my grandfather was and sort of some of our family history, and that stuff started to make more sense over time.
Yeah. Crazy. So, so you're following guerrilla leaders around and making documentaries and
I started to get exposed to kind of like the world of obviously politics, security. I started to learn about organized crime and kind of like some of that shadow
right.
stuff that plays a role in society. You know, I'll never forget the first time I did a car swap where, you know, we changed vehicles for security.
Ooh.
And I was actually with the human rights director in Tijuana, and we became friends. And
Because at this point, you're kind of like a journalist, right? Like you're diving into.
Totally. Yeah. I was
Writing a
kind of an
story.
investigative journalist.
Okay.
But it was still kind of just exploratory.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, I was in college and,
Right.
and I ended up, you know, I was a big nerd. You know, I wrote a thesis on like Haitian Dominican relations and finished college in the Dominican Republic and specifically went there to study the Haitian Dominican border because
Wow.
there's no other place like it on the face of the earth where there's such a stark cultural identity. It's just like this weird, you know,
Yeah.
abyss. It's the same island. It's the same soil. It's the same ingredients on the island, but
Right.
like, you know, you couldn't have two cultures that feel more, you know, resistant to each other. So from an academic standpoint, that was like the place to go do the thesis.
Now, were you having any spiritual like insights at this point in your life, or is this purely just like documenting stuff, interesting things?
Well, I was raised in a Christian home.
Okay.
I had a relationship with Jesus as a youth. I remember being on my knees in youth group and like really communing with the Holy Spirit.
Yeah.
Loved Jesus. But when I was a teenager, my parents separated, and I really blamed our religion.
Yeah.
You know, because it was like clearly this didn't work. Like, isn't
Right.
this all about unity and you know and goodness?
Wow.
And so I think that's where the kind of, you know, the voices got into my head. You know, this didn't work. So it's almost like that was the justification that my flesh was looking for, you know, and the devil surely to try to like spin me out. So I really strayed from faith, you know, through most of my teenage years and into early adulthood. And it wasn't later until I was wrongfully imprisoned, which we can talk about when, you know, I re-encountered Jesus. So during this time, you know, I cared about right versus wrong. I cared about, I could discern good and evil.
Right.
And really all of my passion was about justice.
Got it.
And finding truth and bringing truth to people. But it wasn't with, you know, a God of righteousness in the driver's seat, you know?
I mean, I didn't know that. Like, this is the first time I really
Yeah.
heard about that with your parents splitting up and stuff. And I got to be honest, like, I think it gives me a lot of hope, because, I went through, as a pastor, a divorce, and my son was, I think, 13 years old. And I baptized him like he was in the church. And that really, really pushed him away, like, even to this day, he's pretty resistant, but I see your faith now, and I'm praying and hopeful that my boy is at some point in his life going to come back to the Lord. But anyway, so it gives me hope, man.
Yeah.
So you keep going.
Don't lose hope.
Yeah.
I always knew that I was going to be a Christian again.
Wow, it's a trip. Okay.
Like, that was the phrase that I had in my mind. Like, I knew one day I was going to live a Christian life again.
Yeah.
And, there was so much wickedness that had gotten inside me. It was like, yeah, but Lord, not yet.
Got it.
Like, let me experience some things. I mean, it was just, such a deceptive demonic lie in my head. But I remember looking back, kind of just knowing, there was a knowing that, like, that's the truth. And one day, like, I'm going to come back home.
I bet a lot of people go through that, man.
I've heard people talk about that way. Yeah. I actually, there's a world famous, everybody knows who he is, Daddy Yankee.
Okay.
He's a Latin pop star,
Okay.
reggaeton singer who, he's one of the most famous Spanish language artists in history.
Right.
And he's had a very public conversion to Christianity. And there's even interviews that have surfaced of him, like, when he was in the world and, lust, pride, and riches, the whole thing, that was his brand. But he was like, the one thing I know that is still pending is for me to get right with Christ.
That's so crazy.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah. His testimony is awesome.
Heck yeah. So yeah, keep going, man. This is good.
So, but my whole point in kind of sharing some of that backstory is that I was just sort of, in a providential way, sort of exposed to things that maybe it wasn't necessarily common for like a young Californian surfer guy.
Yeah.
And, so I kind of learned about the world of like private security and was close to some like elections in Latin America and stuff like that. And I just had a high comfort level in some of these atmospheres, and, some of my documentaries got some great feedback, and I won some awards, and I ended up moving to Nicaragua in 2004.
Wow.
And ended up starting a bilingual magazine with a friend of mine.
Okay.
So again, people were like, why would you move to Nicaragua? But by the time that came, it was just kind of a natural progression.
And you were out of school at this time?
Yeah.
Okay.
Out of college.
Okay.
And I actually had sort of ditched the film cameras for still photography by then.
Oh, okay.
I got really, really into documentary photography, sort of war journalism. Had the opportunity to go to Iraq in 2003. I was one of the first civilians into Iraq, like post-occupation.
Wow.
Got to photograph a lot of, stuff there. That was a pretty life-changing experience. And I thought I was going to go work in New York City, and actually had an internship lined up to go do photojournalism, but actually decided, no, I'm going to go to Nicaragua and have a crack at this magazine project. So the context of Nicaragua is, during the 80s, there was a Cold War.
Okay.
So, essentially the West versus, Soviet Union in the East, communism.
Right.
And it was a Cold War that turned hot in specific, geographic locations.
Okay.
So in the Western Hemisphere, only two places ended up consolidating communism: Cuba and Nicaragua.
Oh.
The Soviet Union was trying to seat communist regimes in other places in the West, in Argentina and Guatemala and El Salvador, but the only two places they were successful was Cuba and Nicaragua. So during the 80s, Nicaragua was a communist country.
Okay.
There was a dictator. Families had a ration card, and you would stand in line and you would get your ration of rice and powdered milk and beans and whatever it was. After the Cold War ended, for, believe it or not, mostly geographic reason,
Okay.
Cuba's an island.
Right.
Nicaragua is sandwiched by Honduras to the north and Costa Rica to the south.
Right.
So Western forces, the U.S. government, CIA, the Contra, were kind of able to choke out Nicaragua, and they no longer were able to survive as a communist country.
Okay.
Cuba remained communist. They're communist today, but it's hard to invade an island.
Right.
Okay.
Okay.
So the reason I'm saying that is because for most of the 90s and into the early 2000s, a lot of people were scared to travel to Nicaragua.
Right.
There wasn't a tourism industry, a lot of, foreign investment. It was risky to come and build a hotel or a property or utility because
It was all in disorder.
it was in
basically.
disorder.
Yeah.
But it also resulted in it being very undeveloped.
Okay.
And so in the early 2000s, that started to change. And there was kind of a wave of favorable press talking about the new Costa Rica, and a lot of people who had set up resorts and stuff like that in Costa Rica started coming to Nicaragua, and there was almost like this wave of cash that was crashing on this former communist country.
Right.
Tons of virgin, untouched, beautiful, pristine coastline.
Oh man.
Probably like some of the last stretches of virgin coastline in the Western Hemisphere.
Right.
That's like, can't make any more land.
Right.
And so me and Juanito ended up starting this magazine called The Bridge, El Puente. And it was really designed to try to educate locals that were on the receiving end of this rapid development. And it was we were having the time of our lives.
Yeah.
It's a smart tourism magazine. We're teaching
How old
people
were you
about.
at that time?
I was 24.
Yeah.
24.
Yep.
And it was so unique because
Yeah.
it was like no other context like it really anywhere in the hemisphere.
Yeah.
And, we're being invited into meetings with local politicians. We're advising. It's just, there was so much relevant purpose
Yeah.
at that time. And we were non-tourists.
Yeah.
Surely we enjoyed, the Nicaraguan culture and obviously things like the amazing surf and stuff like
Yeah.
that. But we were non-tourists. I was a resident, a
Wow.
legal resident of Nicaragua. I had assets there. I owned homes there.
At 24.
Yeah.
That's cool.
I made a lot of money really young.
Dang.
And again, it was just kind of right place, right time.
Yeah.
I got into real estate. I ended up, being part owner of a real estate franchise.
Okay.
And, touring investment groups, from helicopters,
Wow.
showing them, huge pieces of property and,
Wow.
teaching them about, why this could be a good investment.
Yeah.
And they come down and ask, well, what about this and the history? And one of the things that we used to tell people is Nicaragua is the safest country in the Western Hemisphere.
Wow.
What I didn't know then is it's not because of I guess, it's the reason why it's so safe is because everyone's scared to commit a crime.
Got it. Okay.
Because there's so many eyes and ears and sort of this web of spies that still exists
Wow.
from the Cold War era.
Okay.
So after, when communism ceased to exist in Nicaragua, a lot of that state security apparatus, that web of spies and informants sort of dissolved into the sectors of civil society, which ended up being a really, interesting aspect to my own, case, later on and
Right.
that we can talk about. But my office was right on the beach.
Yeah.
And this beautiful Nicaraguan girl walked by one day, and I ended up being fortunate enough to date her. Her name
Right.
was Doris.
Mm.
She was from the town of San Juan del Sur.
Okay.
And in unique ways, she was sort of able to open up things about Nicaraguan culture and even the community
Right,
there.
'cause
That
she's been there. She's native.
that wouldn't have been possible otherwise. And I think on the flip side, she probably had the same experience with me. She got to
Right.
meet people and international visitors and stuff. So we dated for a year and broke up.
Hmm.
It was a normal breakup for kids in their 20s.
Sure.
I was really ambitious. I had actually by then moved to another city, the capital of Nicaragua. It's called Managua.
Okay.
And 6 months later, she was brutally murdered in a clothing store that she owned in the town of San Juan del Sur on the coast.
Wow.
That was November of 2006. I received a phone call from her best friend, And I was actually in my magazine office in a conference room with 10 people when I got the phone call. And initially what I was told was that Doris had hung herself.
Okay.
Which was shocking. And, it didn't make sense at all.
Yeah.
I mean, 6 months had gone by since we had split up. We stayed in touch. We talked half a dozen times. I saw her on 2 occasions.
Right.
It took time to kind of untangle a relationship.
Sure.
Again, I don't mean to sound cold about it, but
you were driven. You were like refocused.
It was a normal breakup for whatever that means.
Sure.
And but I was in shock. Cleared my schedule, and me and one of the staff from the magazine, also someone who had been a friend of Doris, we jumped in a car and we drove 120 kilometers to the town of San Juan del Sur.
Okay.
On the way, about, I don't know, maybe half an hour outside of the town, we actually drove by Doris's father's house.
Okay.
So in Central America, there's one highway. It's called the Pan American Highway.
Right.
And we were driving down the Pan American Highway and we could see her father's house and all these cars in the driveway. So I did a U-turn and we pulled in and, embraced each other. He was crying, I was crying. And, I said, hey, he actually only drove a motorcycle. That's right. So I offered to bring him and Doris's grandmother, the other, 20 kilometers or whatever to the town. And I'll never forget, we were in the car and it was a stick shift and he put his hand on my hand and never took it off, even while I was shifting the gears. And he just kept saying how can this be? There's no way my daughter hung herself. And so we show up to the town and we actually pulled right up to Doris's store and we turned the corner and there were hundreds of people waiting.
Wow.
And as soon as we got out of the car, the crowd went silent. Oh, ese es el padre, that's the dad. Ese es el novio, that's the boyfriend. And
which you weren't at the time.
And I didn't even register it, but then later in prison and all that, it was in Latin culture, especially in traditional groups like that, I was still the boyfriend.
Yeah.
And we got to the door of the store and there was a policeman and he wouldn't let us into the store. And we were like, what's going on? And he said, this is a crime scene. What do you mean a crime scene?
Yeah.
Yeah, she was murdered.
Wow.
Step over here. We'd like to ask you guys some questions. So, that phone call really was sort of the beginning of the rest of my life in some ways.
Wow.
And so I was there with our friends and her family for 2 days mourning her death. And then 15 minutes after the funeral, I was arrested by the police.
Wow.
And they put me in the back of a pickup truck. And even though there were other discreet ways to leave the town, they drove me slowly, right down the main streets of the town.
Right.
Where everyone who is, heartbroken and traumatized and arms around each other walking home from the cemetery where we had just buried her, they were all walking these streets. And I remember being this is super dangerous and, trying to duck down and the cops would pick me back up to show everybody this is your guy.
So you're arrested and it's not so this is crazy because I think, I watch these shows. Hey, we want to bring you in for some questioning. You know what I mean? Get a statement. None of that. They just arrested you.
Well, I actually, when they arrested me, they actually said, hey, the police commissioner has some questions. He'd like to interview you.
Okay.
And then, but then they handcuffed me,
right.
And wouldn't let me talk at all.
Wow.
So, I mean, that was the first time I'd ever been handcuffed.
Wow.
I had never been in any legal trouble, much less any sort of criminal justice matter. Yeah, man, it was terrifying.
Scary.
The initial emotion was just,
what's
I was
happening?
so scared.
Yeah.
I'd never really even, again, with all the experience I had, I had never had my freedom taken.
Right.
And bro, as you know, being handcuffed
it's crazy.
Is a very weird sensation,
Yep.
And so they took me to this prison and I'll never forget, you'll probably hear me say that a lot throughout this testimony,
Yeah.
but they slid a piece of paper across this counter and it said, violación y asesinato de Doris Jimenez, rape and murder of Doris Jimenez. And they were like, sign here. And it was like it was some sort of like a prison intake, like an
Right.
administrative form. But that ended up being like the first of thousands of times when I would see my name next to those words.
Yeah.
So man, I ended up, going to prison, and I was angry. I was scared. And of course I'm like, I was in a different city. I have nothing to do with this.
Yeah.
I'm going to be in here for half an hour, you
Right.
know, and
It's crazy how there's 1,000 things. Like I remember that same, situation where you don't really know what's going on. It's the weirdest thing. You're totally detained. You have no answers. You don't know when you're going to have answers. And I can imagine being in a foreign place like that. I can't imagine, prison here is, it's probably a lot different, but yeah, I mean, just the whole thing of you going, okay, what's next? Like what was going through your mind,
Well, one of the things that was so unjust was that I immediately had to start focusing on survival
Totally.
and protecting myself.
I get it. Yep.
Instead of Doris and,
Yes.
the mourning. Like I almost immediately, like my process of mourning my, close friend's murder
Right.
was taken.
Wow,
And all of a
totally.
sudden I had to start learning about the codes of prison and the
Right.
names of people. And, I'm a sharp guy. Like I can read the room, but
Sure.
it's just all consuming.
Yep.
There's a moment of reprieve. You better try to sleep for 15 minutes.
Totally.
Okay, everyone's asleep. Now I'm going to take my clothes off and grab a quick shower. It's like all this. And I didn't, all of it was new to me. A lot of it, I was going through this learning curve, but I thought I was going to be there for an hour before
Right.
one of my business attorneys would show up, or one of my colleagues, or the police would have asked 2 questions to anyone, and they would have realized, oh, this kid was in a different city. Let him go.
Totally. Wow.
He's an American citizen. Like this is going to turn into a whole, but hours turned into days, days turned into weeks, and again, I'd never had any sort of experience in the criminal justice system, but I was a successful businessman.
Right.
I had some very well-connected attorneys that,
Right.
that represented me on business matters.
Right.
And, and they were able to come in and visit me, and they're like, something's not right. Something doesn't make sense.
Oh,
Like
wow.
the police are refusing to go speak and question the people that you were with in Managua. Why would they? They're like, something's not right. It's almost like they don't want to see evidence
Wow.
that you weren't involved.
Huh.
So we actually had to arrange for the magazine staff and the people that were with me that day to travel to a different part of the country,
Yeah.
and almost obligated the police to sit down and take their statements. And the police were trying to manipulate them, and they had to fight to keep their narrative accurate because the
Right.
cops were trying to twist words. So pretty early on, it started to feel like there's like some sort of invisible hand that is operating against an honest pursuit of the truth.
Huh.
And brother, I ended up being formally charged with Doris's rape and murder, along with 3 other men. So there were 4 of us that were actually formally indicted and charged. Myself, 2 local criminals from the town of San Juan del Sur.
Right.
And the 4th kid was actually an American citizen, Nicaraguan American citizen, but I held a U.S. passport. And he had allegedly started to date Doris. They'd gone on a couple of dates in the time period between
Right.
us breaking up and her death. He was from a really wealthy and influential family and was never arrested, and the charges were dropped against him
Yeah.
under very suspicious circumstances. But the other 2 were also detained
Okay.
and put in the same prison as I was. One of them, down a hallway, I watched him get tortured by the police.
Wow.
The next day they released him, and he became the prosecution's star witness. And he ended up testifying in the trial saying that he saw me at the scene of the crime.
Wow.
This guy had according to the forensic reports, like large wounds down his abdomen that were caused by fingernails. He had scrapes on his penis that were caused by fingernails.
Wow.
He like, you know, and I'm, you know, if you were like, hey, who are the two most likely criminals in the town to do something like, these are the two guys that you would have said.
Right.
You know, the other guy was seen hanging around Doris's store a lot in the lead up to her murder, you know, and there was actually conclusive proof of his involvement. So only myself and one of the local criminals ended up going to trial, and the judge planned the trial to start on Valentine's Day.
Okay.
And in the same way that they drove me like down the main streets, that was very intentional. Valentine's Day in Latin America is like the day of love.
Right.
You know, el día de amistad.
Yeah.
It's like all about love and unity and romance and the picturesque couple. But they started like the most, you know, salacious, painful murder trial on Valentine's Day for a reason.
Emotion, like.
But they were so good at like manipulating the emotions of the people.
So I'm wondering, like, because it was a communist country, like how is government even operating at this time? Like,
good question.
You know?
No. So when I moved to Nicaragua actually had become a democratic system on paper.
Okay.
There were, you know, a series of presidents who were elected.
Okay.
And but the former communist leader, since the end of the Cold War, had tirelessly campaigned to be reelected president.
Okay.
For 16 years, Daniel Ortega.
Okay.
And 2 weeks before Doris's murder and my arrest, he was reelected president.
Wow. Okay. So, yeah.
Okay. So the Communist Party is back in power, and they have an American in prison, you know, being charged with the murder of one of their beauties.
Okay, get it.
So they just spun up this whole telenovela, you know, soap opera for the press. And then I went through the whole learning curve of how the media, you know, and how perception can become reality, and how, you know, all the special interests involved in media and stuff like that. So I ended up being tried with this guy, and the prosecution never established any connection between the two of us.
Right.
I testified, you know, he chose not to. And what we presented as the evidence of my defense, which is called an alibi, was sworn affidavits from all the people that were with me that day.
Yeah.
Cell phone triangulation records. So every time you send a message or make a phone call, it actually passes through an antenna, a physical antenna. Yeah. And the cell phone triangulation record showed that my phone was localized to an antenna by my house in Managua, all the way up until the time when I started traveling in a car to the south of Nicaragua. And then it showed the antennas pinging all the way south. I had, back then, AOL Instant Messenger.
Yeah.
That was like the thing.
Right.
And I had a business partner in Atlanta who's actually a very well-known Christian leader.
Yeah.
And we were instant messaging that whole morning, all the way up into the point when I received the call. So there was an IP stamped, you know, registry, and there was a signed credit card voucher. So like from a forensic standpoint, it's called an airtight alibi.
Totally.
I was in Managua. I wasn't in San Juan del Sur. Like, we're in Nashville, Tennessee. We're not in Knoxville.
Right.
So imagine, you know, wherever you are, getting a phone call right now, and you receive the notice that a good friend has passed away.
Right.
And you're like, you guys, I'm sorry, I have to cancel the podcast.
Right.
You're in shock. Your producer witnessed it. I witnessed it. You know, you received the phone call. There's text messages. And let's just say you traveled 2 hours away to Knoxville.
Right.
You know, and 2 days from now, you're at the funeral. And minutes after the funeral in Knoxville, you get arrested.
So crazy.
And charged with the murder. And so So the judge was obviously very corrupt. And later we found out that she had just been following orders from the political party. And they had their own special interest reasons for having an American be convicted, you know, and there was, you know, extrajudicial political reasons that they ended up using the case as a bargaining chip. But man, I was sentenced to 30 years.
Oh my gosh, bro.
30 years in prison. And
when you get that news, I don't think anybody, it's a very small percentage of people that can actually identify with that type of news. That's crazy.
I mean, I'll never forget, because, you know, we had presented like scientific proof of innocence. And there was like the US government and the embassy and the senators that were involved and the human rights groups. I mean, everyone was just like, the only way that they cannot acquit Eric is if the government is intentionally kidnapping him.
Yeah.
So it wasn't a matter of, oh, she made a mistake or like my attorneys didn't do a good job. When she said you're guilty, that meant it confirmed that I was being kidnapped by the Nicaraguan government.
That is so nuts.
Through their institution. And so again, like this is stuff it's taken me years and years and years to understand. I actually experienced more than just what it's like to be wrongfully convicted. I experienced what it's like to be kidnapped.
Wow.
And, but my body just went numb.
Totally.
Before she even said, you know, guilty,
It's like you died.
she started in her verdict saying things like, you know, the witness has all the due credibility. And there was these vignettes. I kind of just checked out at that point because I knew what it was going to be.
Wow, dude.
And I just went numb.
Yep.
And before she was even done, I took this jacket off. I was wearing a bulletproof vest under it because there'd been so many death threats. And actually in one of the preliminary hearings, busloads of people from San Juan del Sur started showing up. And they were holding up banners saying, you know, aquí se va a hacer justicia, bring out the gringo.
Right.
You know,
dude,
sticks, machetes, more and more
Mobs,
buses started
bro.
coming. You know, one of my close friends was out there in the crowd and she called and she's like, hey, there's somebody with a pistol like standing next to the door. And so after the hearing, the court staff was scared to leave. And it was me and my attorneys, some of the court staff, the judge, and believe it or not, my father was there.
Wow.
My father came to,
Yeah.
you know, be a support. And he was with the regional security officer of the U.S. Embassy and one of our attorneys from Miami.
Okay.
And we ended up staying sort of like barricaded in this courthouse for almost, I think it was probably close to like 4 or 5 hours
Wow.
after the hearing. Now it's dark. There's like 10 or 15 police that have showed up and they're inside the court building. And the RSO is what's called the regional security officer.
Yeah.
He was an American security official for the embassy.
Yeah.
He told the police, he was like, you're going to have to arrest me before you take Eric out there because he's not going to survive.
Wow.
And
You
I mean,
heard that?
I heard him say it right in front of me.
Gosh, bro.
And he was like a hardened like war veteran. I mean, this guy is like
Yeah.
no joke. He goes, Eric, give me your, you know, we're going to swap clothes. So he made me give him my t-shirt, my baseball hat, and I put on his suit.
Wow.
Not the pants. We
Right.
kept same pants. And like after, you know, a couple hours, all of a sudden the cops just said, we're going. Like one of the cops got a phone call and he's like, we're going. They opened the door, pushed me out and said, run down and get in the back of that pickup truck.
Oh my gosh.
So, you know, they've pushed me out. The crowd now sees. Everybody kind of like gets quiet, but I hear like the running and the movement of people. and I'm a fast runner. I ran down to the corner, and there was a pickup truck, and I went and I put my fingers on the back of the bed of the truck and made eye contact with the driver through the rearview mirror. And as soon as we made eye contact, he hit the gas and sped away.
So you're hanging.
No, I didn't get in.
Oh, shoot. Okay.
And all of a sudden, like, it just felt like all of space-time history just went shh. And it felt like, I don't know, minutes went by. And all I remember was somebody yanking my right elbow saying, corre, and run.
Right.
And it was like a scene from The Matrix. I don't know. I mean, I feel like the best rational explanation is that there was just some angelic intervention and they like moved my body.
Yep.
And I somehow, like a running back, ran through like a mob of, I don't know, a couple hundred people pulling on my shirt. I remember like a stick flying by my face in slow motion, people hitting the back of my head, but like somehow I pulled out of it.
Running while they're just.
Yeah. I mean, nobody ever like landed like a solid blow, but I remember like faces, and there was no noise.
Which is a miracle in and of itself.
Completely.
Wow.
And my dad, he'll describe the last thing he saw was me turning a corner and hundreds of like an angry lynch mob running after me.
Oh my gosh.
And the security officer, like they made him go another direction because me and him actually look really similar, and they were worried that he was going to get attacked also. So he like in his mind, he was like, my son is gone.
Wow.
And so I bust through and I'm running, and now there's no one in front of me. And they'd taken the laces out of my shoes. And that day the attorney had brought me like some new jeans to be presentable, but they were a little too big. Okay. So I was like running, holding up it was just, so I'm like, I can't keep running because I need to sort of stay close to the cops who are out to get me. But if I, so I'm like trying to.
Where are you running to?
Literally down the middle of a street in a neighborhood I've never been in.
The mob,
yeah.
Wow.
So then I kind of remember glancing to the right and seeing like the entrance to like a stationery shop. Like in Latin America, there's like pencil and notebook shops, and it went in like 20 feet in dead end. And then I looked to the left and I just saw like a gate and a light, and I just went left and ended up like kicking open a door and getting into like this room that wasn't very deep. Mm. And I just ran to the back of the room. It was a dead end, and I hid under a desk, just expecting like this mob of people to come in and, and lynch me. It's a lynch mob.
Yeah.
3 seconds, 5 seconds, 10 seconds. Nobody comes in. There's a bunch of, firearms being shot at this point. The police are firing rounds off and stuff. I'm wondering, are people being shot at, And then one of the main policemen comes running in, bloodied face. And he's like, push this against the wall. We like start trying to barricade our stuff in the room. And I can see out the window, and the cops have blocked with their bodies the little entrance to that little courtyard.
Yeah.
And they're just fighting. And about a minute later, the RSO from the embassy comes in, and he swaps places with the cop. And he's same thing, like blood on his face, his hands. And he's on the phone screaming, and he's saying, get the president on the phone. Like, if you guys don't get us out of here, we're not going to make it. I don't know who he was talking to. I think he was probably on the phone with like somebody in the embassy saying, you got to get the Nicaraguan president on the phone.
Right.
So I'm handcuffed in front. He says, find us a way out. And now it's gone from like, the embassy sort of monitoring the trial and stuff like that. So like, we have to survive. And he's like, Eric, find us a way out, And so I ended up rummaging through a desk and found like some fiber cord and tied it around my shoes. I found like a fabric measuring tape and made a belt out of it.
Wow.
And then I like wet with a bunch of saliva and spit one of my hands, and he helped me actually like scrape one of the handcuffs off.
Whoa.
And I don't know how we did it. So like I clipped the other loose cuff on the other wrist, and then I ended up kicking through the wall. And I kicked through the wall, made a bigger hole, like was able to peel away some of the wood, and me and him like squeezed through this hole that we made in the wall.
Yeah.
And made it into like this other area, and it was like it opened up into a gymnasium, and we sat there for 5 or 6 hours until like the police were able to send reinforcements and kind of get things under control.
I never knew this part, bro. That is so crazy. Wow. Okay.
Bro, I mean, like, so yeah, I mean, it's like I don't mind talking about like the demonic realm and the strategies, because my hope is in angels.
Right.
And I've seen, like, I've been under pressure, and I've seen God show up in that parting the Red Sea type of a way.
For sure.
You know?
For sure.
And so those are experiences that I really give thanks for. And, but all of that happened, bro, even before that guilty verdict. You know, I mean, there was so much that I had gone through even before I ended up being, you know, sort of, you know, condemned.
Yeah. Okay. So you're waiting in this gymnasium. And finally, how do you get out of that? And then when do you get to prison and all that?
Yeah. I mean, finally the, you know, like kind of a bigger police commissioner came in and sort of personally, you know, escorted me back to a truck, and they had created sort of like a perimeter.
Okay.
But there were still hundreds of people. And because you got to understand, like in a lot of the developing world, like police have authority, but the pueblo, they also know about like taking matters into their own hands.
Yeah.
And forming a crowd and protesting and being like, nah, we're not going to let you get. So like the police were scared.
Yeah.
And this is exactly how it happened. We got in the back of this like double cab pickup truck, and they drove right through the people.
Oh my gosh.
And I don't think that we like ran over anybody, but people were like being bumped
pinged
out of the way and pinged hard. And they actually grabbed a guy who jumped on the car. Like it's like he was on meth or possessed or whatever, but like he was more angry at me than he cared about this like vehicle rushing at him. So he jumped on the car, and they actually grabbed him and like put him in the back of the truck and took him to prison. Wow. Just arrested him. And, you know, they took me right back in and put me in the cell. And then I saw the officer from the embassy screaming in the face of the police commissioner. And they got in this huge argument in Spanish. I remember like seeing the whole thing. And the police commissioner was like, okay, you want Eric to be somewhere where no one's going to be able to get to him? Fine. Have your way. And, you know, they came in the middle of the night, woke me up.
Yeah.
And I'll also never forget, they actually this time handcuffed me behind and sat me in the back of the same truck and drove me 2 hours to a prison called Chipote. It's notorious. It's actually a cave in the side of a mountain, and it was the torture prison from the former dictator.
Hey, real quick, if you're enjoying this episode, just a heads up. The audio version of my book, The Little White Shed, it's out now and available on my website, where you can actually download it for free as a new Audible user. Signing up's really easy, and it only takes a few minutes. Thank you so much for your support. Now let's get back to the episode.
And so that was kind of like their way of saying to the U.S. government, like, you think you're going to come down here and give us orders?
Right.
You want them to be safe? Fine, we'll keep them safe. So they just put me in like this small concrete box for 7 days. And I mean, I was safe, but that's a whole nother
mental
experience and mental thing.
Gosh.
But before, I'll never forget too, like that day we had gotten back, and one of the guards threw a newspaper under the, you know, into the cell. And it was a picture of my back, and the headline read, "She defended herself with her fingernails." And in the picture, you can see like these red linear injuries on my right shoulder. And I remember being like so confused, because it was my body. Like I recognized my body. And I remembered when like they're doing the forensic exam, they had me strip down and photograph my body, but they never said anything about, you know, hey, what are these injuries on your shoulder?
Wow.
And so then I'm like, you know, is this Photoshop? Like, what's the deal? And I'm kind of like trying to see my shoulder and I can't see anything because by now those injuries have healed.
Yeah.
And I didn't even know what it was at first until I figured it out. It was the bruises from carrying Doris's coffin.
Oh, wow.
And the coffin was so heavy. It was like just solid hardwood. And like, you know, these guys didn't like put any sort of cushion or sand. It was like a really sharp edge. And there's actually video footage. I'm the tallest guy, so like a lot of the weight was on my shoulder, and of course it's like these linear bruises.
Yes.
Where I was readjusting.
Right.
Because I would get fatigued and it would start to hurt my skin and I would move it.
Wow.
So the cops took that picture, bumped the contrast because later we got the original one, and claimed that those were fingernail scratches from Doris.
Gosh, bro.
And that became like one of the main pieces of proof that, you know, I must have done it, like in the eyes of the Nicaraguan nation, really.
Yeah.
You know? So there was so many little demonic twists and turns of the truth, you know, that I had been dealing with. But so they take me to this prison called Chipote. Excuse me. And it was a concrete box. I couldn't stand up. It's in a cave. There's no, you know, natural light coming in. And man, I almost lost my mind in there.
Yeah, that's crazy.
And they wouldn't let us sleep. You know, I mean, I wasn't like ever like punched or assaulted physically in that prison, but it was definitely psychological torture for sure.
Which most of the time is worse.
And like, I completely lost the sense of what was day and night. I didn't know what time it was. You know, they were starving us. You know, I wasn't going to die from 5, 6, 7 days of no food, but it starts to just get you delirious, you know, withholding food as a form of torture. And they would come and spray water so it would attract mosquitoes. Oh. And that was honestly like the element that almost made me go like mad. Yeah. Was just the constant mosquitoes, which might sound weird, but it was like they were almost like farming mosquitoes to drive you nuts and not let you sleep. So man, I kind of pretended like I was back in my climbing days, and you know, I visualized that I was stuck in a snowstorm and that I made a snow cave and I just had to sort of like endure. Yep. But from a neurological level, like it went right to the edge where I don't know that I was going to have like a psychotic breakdown, but like I started to lose a grip on like agency. Yeah. And that was exactly what they wanted. Right. You know, and that's just when everything changed. You know, the government really started to treat me differently, and I ended up being moved around a lot. Okay. A lot of times when, you know, my attorney or the U.S. Embassy had scheduled a visit, they would move me that same morning to a new prison. I got moved a couple of times because they found out about plans for someone to kill me. Okay. Doris's family was, you know, full of hatred, and initially, in the first hearing, her mom, who I didn't know, I'd only met her one time before I saw her after Doris's death. Okay. And Doris didn't have a very good relationship with her at all. And but when I saw her at the first hearing, and even the night that we were all there mourning, you know, the 2 days after her murder, she asked me if I would pay for the funeral. She was kind to me. She gave me a hug. Even after I was arrested in the first hearing, she gave me a hug in the courtroom and was like, you know, son, I know you have nothing to do with this. Wow. Just hang on. Like, I'm sorry, you know. Yeah. But we later found out that the police lied to her and told her that I had confessed to the crime. Oh. And when she got a copy of the case file, and she actually says this in an interview, she saw there was no confession. And she called the police detective and said, you said, you know, Eric confessed. Right. I said, oh, no, it was an oral confession. It wasn't written. Oh, wow. But by then she had already kind of gone nuclear on me. And so the family and there was a couple of specific family members that were, vocally and publicly saying like, you're going to die in prison. So I was moved around quite a bit.
Yeah. So this whole time you're already convicted. You're technically serving out this sentence, right? But in the background, there's people working at trying to get you out. So what's happening on the outside to try to get you out of there? When was the point that you were like, okay, I need God back in my life? How did that all materialize?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I would say there's really kind of two lines of effort, right? First was my mom, my dad, my family, my friends. I had two friends who were producers at MTV at the time.
Okay.
And they made a short 10-minute documentary about my case. And they put it on YouTube. And the YouTube corporate contacted them and said, hey, this is the first time we've ever seen YouTube used to champion a social justice cause.
Wow. Okay.
Can we put this video on the homepage? And they're like, yes, of course. And so that lit a storm.
Dude, wow.
And that video got 100,000 views in 3 weeks. Okay. Back then those were
right.
really
Crazy
significant numbers. But what it did is it led to sort of a wave of news coverage talking about how this family was using social media and digital media to sort of supplement failed justice. So there was tech publications and stuff talking about the case. And so my mom, man, she was on TV constantly.
Okay.
Telling the story. I mean, back then, the Today Show really mattered a lot. And,
yeah.
She was on CNN talking a lot. And, the White House, it was just they didn't put up with it was, I think the best way to say it is that nowadays it's not uncommon for us to see an anti-American government who's snatched an American citizen and is using them in some sort of a game.
Right.
Back then that was not normal. And, before my case, many, many years before that, there was a case of this kid who had gotten caught graffitiing cars in Singapore.
Okay.
His name was Michael Fay. And he was rightfully, found guilty of the crime, but they caned him publicly. And it turned into a big bilateral issue, and Bill Clinton had to, make statements. And
right.
So that's a show trial.
Okay.
A show trial is when there's sort of power and influence outside the law.
Yeah.
That's affecting the judicial process or the obtainability of justice and relief.
I get it.
Before Michael's case was the little Cuban immigrant who floated ashore, Elian Gonzalez, on a tire, on an inner tube.
Okay.
It turned into a huge international ordeal where heads of state are having to chime in.
Okay.
Usually, private citizen judicial matters, they just stay within the judicial system.
Yeah.
But again, my case in that time period really marked a shift. And there was kind of this new international reality of show trials.
I got it. Okay.
And not to get too academic, but it is really a new form of warfare, asymmetric warfare. And, that's why we see North Korea, Venezuela, Cuba, Nicaragua, Russia snatching Americans,
right,
accusing them of espionage, and all of a sudden you have, Obama putting hundreds of millions of dollars in cash on pallets, on a C-130 to Iran in order for Iran to release some detained Americans.
Got it. Man.
So it's good business to snatch Americans.
Wow.
And my case was actually no different, but no one was looking at it through that lens because
it was new.
It was so abstract.
Yep. So
my family and, we sort of hired the big law firm in Washington, D.C., spent all of our savings.
Right.
They wrote a bunch of power letters to the Jimmy Carter Center, and they had all this activity up here, but no one had ground game.
Okay.
The big Washington, D.C. law firm, and they didn't know who was in the judge's ear. They didn't understand the local dynamics and, on the ground in Nicaragua. So after I was convicted, that law firm was we can't be involved. The only way you're going to, get him out is is if you pay a bribe.
Right.
I don't think that was the exact words, but that was like kind of it felt like that was the way they kind of washed their hands of
Sure.
of the failure. And they said, but we can, we know somebody. And so my mom got contacted by a man named Bob.
Okay.
And he ended up flying to Nashville, and he was a Latin America expert.
Okay.
And he was former CIA, retired CIA. And he was the one who really helped us understand this isn't a miscarriage of justice. This is being done intentionally and strategically. It's an institutional kidnapping.
Okay.
What do you do in a kidnapping? You contact the kidnapper. You open a line of communication and you ask them, what do you want?
Right.
Show me proof of life. What do you want? What are we talking about here?
Yes.
Let's negotiate this out.
Yeah.
Because this isn't about due process.
That's it.
What do you do in a situation where the rule of law is bendable?
Yeah.
Right? When judges are more likely to follow orders from political party leaders than to rule according to the Constitution.
Wow. Okay.
We saw that starting to happen in the Biden administration. So it got scary for a while here in our own country.
Yeah.
Things started to happen here that felt like people would use that word
I'm listening
banana
to
republic.
you talk about this and I'm like, man, I start to see signs of that stuff here,
And Ukrainians, all the people who had fled communism and are living in the United States, when that stuff started happening during Biden administration, they were like, hey, this is what it felt like.
We've been there, yeah.
This is what it felt like in the beginning. The Holocaust was only the last 2 years of Hitler's 12 years in power.
Yeah.
And, for the first phases of his rule, it was soft. That hand starts to squeeze a little more. You hear about it happening over there, but you're like, hey, that's not directly affecting us, honey. So let's just stay quiet.
Totally.
It gets a little closer. Oh, a friend of a friend.
Wow.
Yeah, but it's still not at our doorstep. Honey,
Yeah.
by the time it comes to your doorstep, it's too late. There's no one else to defend you.
It's like a grooming to that point.
Exactly.
Wow.
And so this is real. And I think, so not to get too sidetracked on that, we can talk about that if you want, but, so Tio Bob, as he became known, he started to travel to Nicaragua. He started to visit me in prison, and he actually oddly resembled, like he could have been like my mom's brother.
Okay.
So he kind of used the cover as being my uncle.
Wow.
So we called him Tio Bob.
Okay.
And Bob was this brilliant, human behavior expert who had served our country, his whole entire adult life. And he's the one that really trained me and taught me how to survive in prison. He helped us understand that, first of all, bribes don't work in a situation like this.
Yeah.
Number one, this case is way too high profile.
Right.
Number two, if you pay a bribe, you're just going to have a line of people down the block with their hand out.
Totally.
But most importantly, the honest and good people in this country are not going to get anywhere near you if they know that you're paying bribes.
Yep.
And it's illegal to pay bribes.
Right.
American citizens, there's the Foreign Corrupt Practices Act. So he was furious when he found out that was kind of the way that it had been teed up by the big Washington, D.C. experts.
Okay.
The way you win is you establish the truth and you start to build a coalition. So he actually, went one by one throughout that country with a little laptop and walked people through a PDF presentation of proof of my innocence.
Okay.
And a lot of these leaders were shocked because they never read the case file. They're just reading the headlines like everybody else.
Man, the media.
So my mom, and my family kind of went through this. They were sort of thrust to the forefront of this like wild experience of meeting with, leaders and, arranging news articles and negotiating with Telemundo this. And it's just like, it was this whole international sort of operation to get me freed.
Yeah.
And it wasn't always clear, like who's a good guy, who's a bad guy.
Right.
And at one point, I got taken out of my cell, and the guard was like, "Hey, put on a shirt." I was like, well, I just got my t-shirt. And he's like, no, put on a collared shirt. And I'm like, I don't have a collared shirt. So there was this guy who I had like this weird tension with in the gallery, like across the hall from me. He was just a mean guy.
Yeah.
And the guard didn't know, but he went and ordered him to give me one of his shirts. So I ended up like wearing this button-up shirt. It's way too big.
Yeah.
It's like, dark. Everybody's already on, been locked down for the evening. But because of that, everyone's seeing the guards take me out.
Yeah.
He walks me outside of the prison, like out into the administrative office area. So like past the main sort of like guard, AK-47 post. And it's like, this is the first time I've been outside of like the prison walls for months and months. It feels like
that's a weird feeling.
Yeah. And I'm walking and there's like birds and trees. I'm seeing all this for the first time and like open space. They take me into this like back door and I walk in and it's the warden of the prison and the former president of Nicaragua, his wife, and a doctor.
Okay.
Arnoldo Aleman, they call him El Gordo, the fat guy.
El Gordo, yeah.
He, at the time, and maybe today, was on the list of like 50 most corrupt people in human history.
Right.
He was convicted of embezzling like so much money from Nicaragua, which is like, one of the poorest countries in the hemisphere.
Right.
He denies it, whatever, it's a whole thing. But his wife, who's, 20 years younger than him, had been a fan of EP Magazine.
Oh.
And the whole time she's like, something doesn't add up. Like we never met in person, but we had mutual friends. And so she started looking into the case and she was like convinced her husband that I was innocent. So the guy's on house arrest, but
El
Gordo's on house arrest, but he ignores the order.
Yeah.
And he's like on the move all the time. And he travels back to the same prison that he was in. And orders the warden to pull me out so we can have a secret meeting in the warden's office.
Wow.
And when I get there, he kicks the warden out. So it's just me and El Gordo and, he gives me this big hug and just like within 10 seconds, I'm like in love with the guy. He's like the most charismatic leader, jolly, just, brilliant.
Right.
How are you? Hey, I brought my doctor, I heard you were, having some lung issues, the whole entire thing. And he's like, look, I can't influence the case, but there are still judges that were put in place during his administration that are loyal to him and that he can make sure that they understand what's going on. So he had aspirations to be reelected president and he wanted to curry favor with the U.S. government.
Okay.
So what a better way than to help this American that's being yoked up by the communists.
Right.
So, so my case ended up being in an appellate court, and the president of the appellate court had been placed by Arnoldo Aleman when he was president.
Okay.
And Arnoldo called him and said, I am not telling you what to do. I'm just saying, do what is according to due process and the Constitution, which meant subsequently that I would be, my conviction would be overturned.
Wow.
So, so there was kind of this whole like private lobbying side that was happening. And then, for me personally, I'm languishing in prison, bro. I mean, my whole entire life, I was this long-haired, soccer-playing California rock climber kid who cared about social justice and ironically had like studied these people and written, essays about the Nicaraguan communists and stuff, but it was all theoretical. And now here I am.
Wow, dude. Yeah.
I'm literally like
a victim.
Yeah. I'm literally being held captive by these people. And these old Cold War dynamics are reemerging in the case. And, we weren't able to discuss a lot openly over the phones, but sometimes I would get a visit and somebody would say like, hey, your mom just had a meeting with so-and-so. And I was just like, whoa. So here I am, I'm in prison, bro. And I'm watching like, a head of a country, like lie about who I am, and so I went through that whole thing about like seeing people who don't even know you debate about who you are publicly, the defamation and just like, so, I'm facing death every single day. I mean, I saw multiple murders take place in prison.
Right.
I saw, people going to the witch doctor's cell. He was considered so dangerous, and the guards were so scared of him that he was permanently locked into his cell.
Yes.
He wasn't in what you call, they didn't really have, I guess they had solitary confinement, but it's not like the whole
Yeah.
in the States. And I used to people walk up to him like it was a concession stand.
Yeah.
Pay him money, he would curse somebody, and the next, and you
Right.
would see like actual tangible things happen in those people's lives.
Oh yeah.
Whether it was death or disease or, I mean, some of the most painful things that would happen in prison would be men would receive notice that their woman had left them.
Yep.
Or, their wife had started a new life with a new man, and so his kids now have a new father. I mean, that was the stuff that
That's crazy.
in Spanish you call it quemando cable, burning cable.
Yeah.
That was how you described like the effect that it would have on you mentally.
Yeah.
Just a cable burning.
So did any of that really impact, your encounter or decision to really go back to the Lord? I mean, because what we don't understand here is, such a virtual reality here. Like reality all over the world is there are real principalities, powers, rulers of darkness who are operating. There's real witchcraft. This stuff has power. I mean, do you feel like that sort of influenced some of it, or how did that go? Like you coming back to faith?
Well, I think like I was in sort of this spiritual checkmate.
Yeah.
Where, I'm physically confined, but also like my worldview wasn't working. And I started getting letters from people from all over the world. When the embassy would come to visit, they would bring a stack of letters, or my attorney would bring, because there was the case there was a lot of news attention.
Yep.
And everybody had the answer in these letters.
All right.
And it was from like every walk, Buddhists, you got to set your intention. Back then there was a book called The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle.
Yeah.
It was kind of like, there was a new wave of new era false stuff that came into Western society. So this whole thing about like, you need to set your intention and visualize. And, I heard from Muslims, I heard from, Catholics, I heard from, all these different walks, and everybody was like, this is the answer.
Yeah.
But the only thing that rationally made sense was the worldview of a Christian.
Yeah.
Which is, because all the other ones were like, you have to do X, Y, and Z in order to attain like this mountaintop existence.
Yep.
You do the work and then you obtain.
Yeah. It's a burden.
But Christianity is totally the opposite. You can't do anything.
Yeah.
All you can do is surrender.
That's right.
And recognize that Jesus is the way, the truth, and the life.
Yep.
It's the opposite. And if Jesus was wrongfully accused,
Wow. That's right.
falsified evidence,
Yep.
tried in secret, beat by a lynch mob,
Right.
walked, had society turn. I mean, like,
Totally.
like I actually was able to, I literally identify with an aspect of what Jesus experienced.
That's right.
And I honestly can imagine what it would be like to sweat blood.
Yeah.
I mean, I can honestly say that.
Wow.
I'm not comparing myself to that he took the sin and the weight of the world on his shoulders. I'm just saying, like, I physically, physiologically, emotionally, like, that's not hard for me to imagine.
Yeah.
And, so it was like these personal epistles almost that like God was using to get through to me intellectually. And, but Jesus was able to cheat death.
That's right.
So, I mean, there was one day, man, where I was in the hallway and I was coming back from like something, and there was like this main corridor with these galerias off to the side. And I had to, get the guard who's being lazy to come over and open up the door, because being in the main hallway was not safe.
Right.
Because there's people from, so he opens the thing, shuts the door, locks me in. And now I'm like in my open galeria, and a fight started right where I was just standing.
Yeah.
But now I'm behind locked bars.
Mm.
And within 10 minutes, there was 11 people dead
Wow.
right in the same little corridor where I was
Right where
standing.
you were.
And so, man, that was the worst.
Mm-hmm.
But there were things like that happened where I'm like, man, like what happens if I die in here?
Yeah.
What's
What
next? And so, and I didn't have the luxury of, you know, having that thought and then just going to dinner or
Right.
going for a run or,
Yeah.
you know, going to hang with friends. Like I went back to my cell.
That's right.
And that same threat was there an hour later. It was there that night.
Right.
The next day there was another riot. Another person died. So it was just like things just kept getting tighter and tighter and tighter around me. And God just kept stripping away. And I was really left with just like the essence of who I was. And it wasn't pretty.
Yeah.
There wasn't really anything there. And so all these things that we use to sort of echo off our surroundings and create this sense of identity. For me, it was, you know, my business magazines, my business, my magazine, my friendships, sports, music, actually.
Yeah.
You know, clothing, little things. It was like I was able to manufacture this sense of being.
Yep.
And there's a reason why people talk about God a lot when you've been to prison.
That's right.
It's a cliche, but it's a cliche for a reason because it forces you to actually get honest. Same with the hospital.
That's right.
You know, when you're on your deathbed, when you're in prison, when you're lost at sea,
Yep.
you know, that's when you start to get honest.
It's almost like, you know, when we look at these things, I know for me too, yeah, prison and all that stuff was a difficult thing to go through, but I always say it really was one of the best things that happened to me in my life. The most difficult, but it did get me to that place where it stripped all that stuff away, man. All the identity stuff.
The way to God is down
Yeah.
for a lot of men, you know, and sometimes I'll share my story and people will be like, man, you have the most amazing testimony. And I'm like, actually, it's not amazing.
Yeah.
That's how hard my heart was.
That's right.
That's how like sophisticated
Yes.
my narrative
Doesn't have
was.
to be that way.
You know, I had to lose a dear friend. I had to lose everything. I had to face death. You know, I had to, like, God had to kind of come and hack space, time, history, my worldview, and I had to, like, one by one try things. I tried the power of intention.
Yeah.
I never prayed to a foreign God necessarily, but, like, you know, I tried to breathe my way out of it. I tried all this stuff because I was desperate.
Yep.
And so there was a guy who had been a drug pilot for Pablo Escobar.
Okay.
And he led a little Bible study in his cell.
Wow.
And there was like 2 or 3 guys that would meet every day, and they were all like had like really, really bad crimes.
Yeah.
Kidnapping, you know, like they were like rightfully in prison.
Yeah.
But they were just ragamuffin, still foul mouthed, but they loved Jesus. And so Pastor Mario, he is the one that really started to like facilitate, you know, an understanding of the scriptures. And I started reading the word.
Okay.
And actually, God used Rick Warren's book, The Purpose-Driven Life.
Yep.
But it was in Spanish.
Wow.
And if that had been in English, I think all of my sort of triggers to my childhood things
wow, okay, that's great. Yeah.
would have gone up.
Totally.
But because it was in Spanish, they didn't exist.
That's right.
And so God actually ministered to me through a Spanish language context.
Wow.
And that was all part of his perfection and his love for me.
Yeah.
Because I had never developed pain in
the
Spanish.
realm. Oh, that's good.
And I'll never forget the first chapter of that book was titled No se trata de ti. It's not about you.
Wow.
And so I was reading the Bible, and then I had kind of, you know, Rick Warren's his 40-day sort of grid for thing to make in it, and I started to understand, like,
wow,
God is allowing this to happen.
Yep.
you know, and I recommitted my life to the Lord. I just knew I did it alone.
Yeah.
One day it was like, I just had this thing inside my gut
Yep.
that wanted to come out. And I'll never forget. Here I go saying that again.
Yeah.
I'll never forget.
You won't.
I never forget these moments.
Nope.
A childhood friend, her name is Cody. She was like my sister. Her mom and my mom were best friends. So we grew up not even knowing that we weren't biologically connected. She wrote me a letter.
Huh.
And when you're in prison, and I know you know this, but you start to go down the list of all of your friends.
Yeah, dude.
And you're like, man, I haven't heard from that person.
Mm.
I wonder what they think.
Yeah.
Maybe they think I did it.
Right.
Or maybe they're not alive. You just start to, you have all this time to
Totally.
quemar cable.
Yeah.
And she was one of those people. And it was, you know, a good way into my whole ordeal that I get this letter from her. And she just said, you know, hey brother, like I have been so scared to write you this letter because I don't want to push you away.
Yeah.
But I'm just asking God right now to enter in my fingertips as I type this. I'll never forget how it opened up. And she was like, this isn't about you. You know, this is about your eternal soul.
Yeah.
This is about, you know, what Jesus did for you on the cross. And she just started laying out the gospel. And this wave of God's presence washed over me in the cell, and I started crying.
Yeah.
And like, I would read one sentence and it was like, it wasn't violent. It wasn't like some like electrocuting thing.
Yeah.
You know, it was just like this, I would get tingles up and down my body, and it was like this discharge
Totally.
of pain and toxins and thoughts and lies and all this stuff. I was being delivered.
Yes. Yep.
In the most loving, soft way. And it took me probably an hour to read a 1-page letter just because of this encounter that I was having with the Lord.
I get it.
And I ended up, you know, just crying in this tender way and just going on my knees and being like, Lord, you know, I want you back.
Yeah.
You know, I give you everything.
Yeah.
I invite you back into my heart.
Yep.
That's how I was taught to pray as a kid, was like, you invite Jesus into your heart. Not only you surrender, but you actually invite him to come and dwell in your heart.
Yeah.
And I did.
Yep.
And I sat there for another, you know, a time. And then I got up, and I remember feeling like free.
Yeah, man. Feels good.
I was free. I became free even though I was behind bars.
That's right.
And I walked outside kind of like a little bit like, whoa, like, you know, what's going on in my body?
Yep.
I feel relief. I was in the same place, the same surroundings, the same criminals, the same murderers, but I just physically was different. And I walked to the end of the Galleria, and there was one window where you could see the top of a tree.
Yeah.
And I went and I looked outside, and my vision was like HD, super high def.
Yes.
And I was like, I didn't have an understanding of it.
Yeah.
But I realized that like I was new.
Yeah.
Something actually was renewed, even in like my neurological pathways and the way that my brain was. It was a miracle.
Spirit born again, man.
So every ounce of me still ached for freedom, but the prayer changed from get me the hell out of here to like, your will be done.
Yes.
And if I need to stay in here for you to like squeeze fruit, so be it. Minimize my physical pain, minimize the pain and suffering of my family.
Yeah.
But like, I'm your vessel. Use me, God.
Such a good place to be, man.
And I made a covenant with God. I was like, I want you to use me.
Yeah.
I want to do great exploits with you the rest of my life.
Yeah. So let's go there, because, you know, all this stuff obviously has shaped, you know, the latter part of your life and everything that you're doing and have been doing. So you get released finally, and tell me about what happened from there.
Yeah, the case was overturned in an appellate court.
Okay.
Judicially. There was a lot of pressure from, you know, from politics for the appellate court to do the right thing.
Right.
We actually ended up discovering that my case was being leveraged in a missile negotiation between the Nicaraguan government and the U.S. government.
Wow.
And, you know, there's a lot of details about that,
Sure.
but essentially we threatened to make that public.
Oh, okay.
And within a matter of hours, former Secretary of State Condoleezza Rice was on television. She interrupted a press conference with the Canadian Prime Minister,
Wow.
demanded that I be released. This was after the case was overturned in the
Yeah.
appellate court. And a couple hours later, I was on a private plane leaving Nicaraguan airspace. So, you know, I came home, and there was a very strange, almost like cause celebrity that was surrounding the case.
Yeah. Okay.
And, you know, I went from being in this smoldering hot prison cell to leather couches in New York City,
Wow. On TV.
in the green rooms.
Wow.
And, you know, it was a weird experience because I was a media operator already.
Yeah.
I was an operator.
Okay.
And I saw I almost felt like this opportunity to go and highlight what had happened in Nicaragua
Yeah.
for the overall well-being of that country.
Yeah.
By now I have like really close friends who've risked their lives.
Yeah.
Check this out. So at one point before the trial, I was allowed to be on house arrest for 2 weeks.
Okay.
But in order for me to be released, the judge required two things: that somebody would put up the title of their house. So if I escaped, the government would confiscate that person's house
Wow.
as collateral. And the second thing is he actually required somebody to put themselves up, meaning if I escaped, they would take my place in prison. This is totally illegal.
Right.
He just made it up.
Wow.
And my sort of deputy at the magazine, she was Nicaraguan. She agreed to put her own self up as
Wow.
collateral. And a woman who I never even met, it was the grandmother, the Christian grandmother
Yeah.
of one of my business attorneys, agreed to put the title of her house up.
Wow. It's heavy.
I'd never met her. She'd never met me. She didn't know the truth. She just was going based off what she discerned by the Holy
Spirit of
Spirit.
God, right?
And that was before I even came back to the Lord.
Right.
So my point is like, by the time I came home, like I am grafted into the future of this nation.
Yeah.
And I've, you know, there are people that still to this day are very, very, I mean, they're closer than a brother. I mean, it's
Sure.
biblical, right?
Yep.
So I really felt like this almost obligation to raise the alarm and ring the bell on certain things.
Yeah.
And God said, your first job is to share your testimony.
Yeah.
And so I did my best to glorify him.
Yeah.
And, you know, I told my story, did the book deal,
Yep.
spoke at lots of churches,
Yeah.
really was embraced by sort of the, you know, the human rights community
Yeah.
as like, hey, this is a new kind of case.
Right.
And I wanted to get back into sports and publishing. And every time I would take a step in that direction, it was almost like God would just yank my collar and say,
Yeah.
no, son, like I didn't allow all that to happen just for you to go and seek your own
That's right.
desires again. And I got a phone call from the FBI, and they invited me to speak at their prayer breakfast.
Wow.
And I was like, that's really cool. You know, go speak to a bunch of like believers that also are,
Yeah.
you know, freedom fighters. And so I went and shared my testimony and ended up praying for a bunch of FBI agents in Washington, D.C. And they were like, we've been, you know, the way that your case was different. And we've been watching the way that you're talking about international crisis. And so it was really like kind of like a wink from the Lord as I started to kind of almost receive like an acceptance into this like non-civilian community.
Right.
And I started making new friends.
Mm.
And I started getting phone calls. And as a civilian, started to offer advice to people who were, you know, in an abundance of counsel, there's victory.
Right.
And one day I got a phone call from a lawyer, and her brother was wrongfully imprisoned in Latin America. And she just said, we've talked to everybody, and everybody says, like, you're the guy.
Oh,
We want to hire you to be our case manager. Like, name your price.
wow.
And I prayed about it and kind of talked to counsel and agreed to
Yeah.
get involved. And I worked on his case full time for 2 years,
Wow.
and we freed him.
Nice.
And God was glorified. And I ended up using a lot of the same people that God had brought around my own case.
Yeah.
I hired them to work on this new case.
Yes.
We trusted each other. There was a bit of like a playbook
Yeah.
for how to do some of this
And was
stuff.
it an official foundation or anything like that at the time, or was it just something you were pulling together?
Well, no, because we were about to receive a wire transfer,
Okay.
I had to create an entity.
That's right. Okay.
And, and I tried to do the whole workshop and come up with the brand.
Right.
And it was, the Holy Spirit was like, it's called David House Agency.
Wow.
I mean, I don't talk like that much. I'm
Yeah.
careful, but it was like clearly like it dropped in.
Yeah.
And even recently I was in Israel, almost 17 years after that's not true. I don't know, 17 years after David House Agency was born, and God was still revealing to me why he named it David House Agency.
That's good.
So, the David House Agency was born.
Yeah.
And it's we're a consulting firm that specializes in solving complex legal and political matters.
Yeah.
Specifically when there's like a political or cultural undertone, or some sort of media or cancel culture undertone really affecting, the obtainability of justice.
Yes.
And that looks very different. It's a case by case thing.
Yeah.
You can't just, they're not all the same. So for about a month before I was released, Amanda Knox was arrested and wrongfully imprisoned in Italy.
Okay.
And there was a case of 3 American hikers that were wrongfully imprisoned in Iran.
Wow.
And I got to work on both of those cases in different capacities as an advisor. And it's been a revolving door of show trials where American citizens are being wrongfully imprisoned abroad for a variety of reasons.
Yeah.
And so the David House Agency, we get contacted on a lot of the cases.
Yeah.
The Trump administration's been really good about standing up for American citizens that are wrongfully detained overseas.
Yeah.
And there's now a special office in Washington, D.C. that's assigned to representing those families
Okay.
and lobbying on behalf of those American citizens. That's how it should be.
Wow. That's great.
And around the time that work and that special envoy really started to develop in the U.S. government, the David House Agency started getting contacted more and more on matters related to the persecuted Christian church
Yes.
around the world.
Okay.
So the skill set started being used to protect churches and free wrongfully imprisoned pastors. And man, that's what we've been doing for since about 2010.
Yeah.
And David House Agency was formed in 2012.
Gosh, I mean, I know, and I don't know if you can really even get into it or not, but it may seem like this doesn't really happen in America and stuff
Yeah.
like that. But I know recently there was one with Torben Sundergaard, and I know, you got to work on that. I don't know if you can even talk about that, or what were some key things, in terms of, hey, this stuff does happen in America. Is there any detail you can talk about with that, or?
Yeah, I mean, so Torben Sundergaard, he's a Danish pastor,
Yeah.
amazing man of God, and he grew up in the Lutheran church,
Okay.
and he was reading the Bible, and he's reading the book of Acts, and then he's looking at his daily church life, and he's saying, "There's a disconnect here."
Which I've done so many times.
We're not stepping out in faith and
Right.
and going after healing and deliverance.
Yep.
And so he fasted and got the grace to just start doing what he was reading in the book of Acts.
Yeah.
So he kind of became one of the first sort of street preacher, evangelist kind of, and he's good at media too.
Sure.
he produced a movie called The Last Reformation,
Right.
and kind of, his ministry exploded.
Yeah.
And he ended up, without going into all the details, he got ran out of his own country. He was facing arrest.
Primarily because of deliverance, right?
Specifically because of deliverance. And also there were a couple of people that came to the Lord through his ministry.
Yeah.
And people got offended.
That's right.
Powerful people got offended.
Right.
And ended up, arranging for like a hit piece documentary to be done about him.
Right.
That was done in coordination with a group that lobbied for laws to be changed in Denmark.
Wow.
That, made it potentially criminally liable to do certain kinds of to cast demons out in public.
Dude.
I mean, dude, that's what it was.
And
He was
because that's what I do,
I mean, exactly. So it was so demonic the way that they came at it. They came at it through a family law and basically argued that for people to experience deliverance in the presence of a child could cause what they called psychological violence. And it's not a law that says you're not allowed to pray, but it was like through this kind of, nuanced child protection law.
Right.
Which is not hard to imagine if you think about the laws and rules and how ridiculous some of those things are in those countries. But it wasn't in good faith. There was actually like a powerful interest group that wanted Torben Sundergaard to go to prison.
That's right. Yeah.
And so he fled and he came to the States and he continued to do ministry.
Yeah.
All through COVID.
Right.
I mean, him and his family, he ministers with his family. They traveled to 40 different states, I believe, during COVID. I mean, you can see him on YouTube too. I mean, there's a video of him walking into like a Lens Crafters.
Praying for a dude and he just starts going into deliverance.
Have you seen that video?
Yeah, bro. He's casting demons out.
The manager.
Yeah.
The manager in the Lens Crafters. Like, next thing you know, he's literally on the floor getting delivered like a snake, and Torben's praying and he's calming down.
Yeah, he's narrating.
Staff
Which is
yeah,
so
it's
cool,
okay,
man.
just
He's
relax.
like, it's good. This is the gospel. Like, don't worry. Like, I love it.
So, man, it's a long, complicated story.
Yeah.
A lot of it's non-public, but he ended up being wrongfully imprisoned in the United States.
Yeah.
And he was falsely accused of moving weapons across state lines.
Yeah.
And he was held in an ICE detention center for over a year.
Over a year, dude.
He was obviously an asylum applicant. He had properly filed his paperwork for asylum for him and his family, and he had a very clear-cut case.
Yeah.
And so yeah, we had the honor and the privilege of being able to walk with him and his family through that process, and eventually he was released.
Yeah.
And he's doing great. I really encourage people to follow his ministry.
Yeah, I love Torben, man. I think he's doing a great work for the Lord. So let me ask you this. That's a lot. This is great, man.
Ask anything you want. I don't get to usually, I'm not opposed to podcasts. I'm busy.
Yeah.
So man, I love it. Let's talk. You ask anything you want.
Well, it's cool because we talk all the time, we hang out. But we just mainly talk about, normal everyday stuff or what's on our heart at the moment.
Yeah.
I haven't really pressed into details on some of these things that I'm like, wow, I didn't realize the magnitude of some of this stuff. And so I'm like, this is awesome.
Yeah.
So like recently, what's really been on your heart? Like what are you passionate about? What's happening in your life right now that you would say you would want to just talk about?
Man, I'm really, really doing a lot of thinking around how easy it is for people to get deceived.
Yeah.
And how complex, it's like after COVID, everything feels different to me.
Okay.
And it's almost like a before and after. And it's like truth is offensive to people now.
Right.
Thank God it feels like a lot of that woke stuff has kind of gone to sleep.
Yeah.
But things just started to get so backwards.
Okay.
And I think there's a lot of residual of that. And there's a lot of that in the church right now.
Yeah.
A lot of people are believing things that aren't true.
Yeah.
And I think that according to the prophecies of scripture is only going to increase.
Well, that's what the Bible says, that in the end, as we get close to the end, there will be a deception.
Yep.
There will be a great deception.
It's counterfeit truth.
Right.
It's false justice movements.
And really this is important because a lot of people don't think about this in Christian circles. Like, we have to talk politically because we don't wrestle against flesh and blood. The Bible's we quote that verse all the time, but we don't understand what we're saying. When we're talking about principalities, powers, rulers of darkness, spiritual hosts of wickedness, these are geographical rulers of governments, places, spaces.
Exactly.
That we have to understand in the Christian space that there's ways to pray, fast, specifically in regards to these things.
Amen.
We
Amen.
got to know this stuff,
Yeah.
right? So, I mean, there's things happening in government, that, the prince of the power of the air. Satan's kind of running some things on earth. We have all power and authority because the kingdom is here now, but there's still work to be done and things that we have to understand. And we've got to know that governments are influenced by principalities.
Yeah.
And there's a difference between principalities, powers, rulers of darkness. We talk about deliverance. And, we're hand-to-hand in combat. We're dealing with unclean spirits, the ones that we cast out and stuff like that. But when we're dealing with principalities, that's a whole nother realm that are influencing governments. And there's witchcraft and there's ways of operating that they operate that we're totally oblivious to,
That's
I think,
right.
in America.
That's right.
So,
Right. I got so many crazy stories. When I was on the plane this morning and I was just kind of thinking about some of my experiences with that. I actually, one day, this is maybe 2 years after I came home from Nicaragua, my mom was visiting me in Los Angeles where I was living at the time. And she came to church with me, and she lives in Tennessee. So,
right.
we were happy to see each other. I got my arm around her. It's a sunny, beautiful day in California. And we're walking to the car after church, and we noticed this, they looked like a homeless person.
Sure.
In LA, the homeless people sometimes like almost get into character, and
Right.
this homeless person was wearing almost like a Gandalf type, cape with a big oversized hood so you couldn't see their face. And the person had a staff.
Okay.
And was like kind of walking weird. And my church was kind of in a neighborhood, so it was like pedestrian crosswalk. And so we get to the corner and we notice this person on the other corner, and we're about to walk across the street toward that person. And so our attention's fixed in front of us, and this lady ends up like sort of lifting up her head.
Right.
And so her face kind of comes into view and her finger at the same time pointing at us. And she goes like this. She goes, "Go back to prison." And like, just like drops
Right.
and just doesn't move. Like it's like stone frozen in like the gnarliest, most like
Right.
demonic voice. And me and my mom were like shocked,
Yeah.
speechless. And we look at each other and we just started dying laughing.
Right.
We just started dying laughing because it was like, that's the best you got.
Right.
Like, but later I was like, wow, the demons in Santa Monica, they know who I am.
Yeah. Oh yeah, bro.
I had just moved there.
Yeah.
And so it's like, there had been a message sent. Hey, that guy that we didn't get down
That's
in Nicaragua, guess what? He's assigned to you now.
Yep.
He's in this neighborhood.
Yep.
That demon, I'm not saying that person was possessed, whatever was going on there,
Yeah.
but clearly there had been a briefing.
Right.
My name was on the briefing. Hey, here's new people that have moved to your jurisdiction.
Right.
And that was like a low level, spirit that didn't have authority to do anything.
That's right.
But wanted to try to get some points with the guys back at the base.
Yeah.
Hey, I taunted, that Eric guy.
Yeah. Or even was made to do it, because the lower level ones can be tormented by the
For
higher
sure.
level ones.
For sure. But I'm
You're
just
going to
saying,
do this, right?
it was kind of like this amazing experience where there's communication in that demonic realm
100%.
regionally. Like I just moved to Santa Monica, you know, and I recently got married,
Yeah.
and which has been amazing.
It's cool, bro.
Like,
Because you've been single for a minute.
and I wanted to be a husband for a long time,
Yeah.
and
It's awesome, bro.
you know, so but my wife is from the Caribbean.
Yeah.
And so it's given me access to a lot of very interesting people, and just God has a plan.
Yeah.
And even just last week, like I was in the room with somebody who's a born again Christian, but was a very high level witch doctor at one point.
Right.
And he knew personally one of the priests that traveled to Africa
Yeah.
with Fidel Castro and helped steward a 5-day ceremony
Yeah.
where he was baptized into what's called Yoruba, which is like the main sort of West African, you know, religion. They hung like a perfect black bull, you know, sacrificed it, and they literally baptized Fidel Castro for 5 days with the bull's blood.
Yeah.
And this guy was at the heart and center
Yeah.
of the Cold War struggle in the Western Hemisphere.
Yeah.
He wouldn't do anything without consulting his card reader,
That's right.
his spiritual advisor. I mean, this guy brought the world to the brink of annihilation when he allowed for, you know, the Soviet Union to park missiles in Cuba. It's
Yeah.
called the Cuban Missile Crisis. People can look it up. So, and then from there, it exported into Venezuela.
Right.
Hugo Chavez was openly known to practice witchcraft,
Yeah.
spiritism. He had a reputation for being like able to have this really high capacity to like
Yeah.
channel spirits. I mean, it gets really intense.
Yeah.
He dug up Simon Bolivar's remains and said that they wanted to do some DNA testing to see if he was poisoned. But really, it was just to lay hands on Simon Bolivar to get some sort of a weird
Power.
impartation
Yeah,
power.
impartation,
He had his
yeah.
whole cabinet show up for this thing.
Yeah.
I mean, so a lot of times when you actually dig, you know, you look behind the curtain,
Yeah.
there's demonic doctrine, there's actual ceremonies, you know.
100%. And I, you know, when I think about like the difference between, say, divination, witchcraft, see, people got to understand that we're dealing with heaven and earth, right? And the whole thing about divination, I think, is divination is more reaching divine knowledge, trying to receive divine knowledge
Right.
and power, and getting that divine knowledge and power, and then just simply either communicating it or getting the knowledge, right? But there has to be an altar or some form of physical modality that happens to manifest it almost. And so that's where witchcraft is really the
craft.
craft. It's
Right.
the physical modality, whether it's placing a physical voicing of a curse,
Right.
or a manipulation of, you know, a doll, stabbing a doll, any form of physical modality that takes that divine knowledge and uses it to then create an outcome on the earth. And that's how the kingdom of darkness runs. Like, and the reality is, people might not even think I'm not operating in divination or witchcraft, but if you're using the same modalities, it doesn't matter. It's still legally the
Right.
same transferring,
Right.
right? And you know, at this moment, we know biblically that there is the prince of the power of the air, right? We're still under the power of the enemy. That's what's so amazing about being saved and being under the power of Christ, is that trumps that
Yeah.
kingdom. But we have to be familiar with how the enemy runs the world, basically, with politics, religion, financing, all that stuff. And we can't be ignorant to the wiles of the devil, because there's ways that we have to operate in the kingdom of God to advance his kingdom. And if we don't have that knowledge, we're just going to be ineffective
Right.
for the kingdom of God.
Yeah.
So
What do you think about, like, you remember Peter Wagner kind of was the pioneer of like spiritual strategic warfare, and, the idea of like taking authority over territorial spirits. But when I searched the scriptures, maybe I'm wrong, but I don't see Jesus ever take authority over a territorial spirit. He calmed the storm. Elijah stopped the rain, but it was always on a personal level. And so, you hear about sometimes this is a little maybe more specific to certain streams of Christianity, but
yeah,
I mean, I took a guy to the Middle East once to kind of be an interceder to intercede during a case, and he was like, "Oh yeah, I felt the atmosphere shift as soon as I landed." We're no longer friends anymore but
wow,
I
you
just
got some power.
I just
bro.
remember kind of being like, I don't know, man, that just felt a little bit naive to say something like that. But I actually, and Ken Fish has taught me this too. Like, you don't go to like, stand outside a Hindi temple and like cancel the power of that demon in Jesus' name. Like, you don't mess with that stuff. He's actually has some really wild stories of almost dying, from even just having some of the incense blow over his body. But I'm curious what your thoughts are on the sort of territorial stuff.
This is my opinion. Based on what I see in scripture, I think the best example for dealing with principalities is Daniel.
Right.
Fasting, prayer, appealing to God. Like even the archangel Michael was like, "The Lord rebuke you."
Right.
So there is a process. I mean, it was 21 days of fasting and prayer. And we know that there was war in the heavenlies, in that realm, principality realm. So I think our part in that has to do with that type of appeal. It's not like, I bind you, principality, in the name of... Now there's a place for that, but it's in the lower level. It's at the ground level. These are unclean spirits that come from dead Nephilim. I did a podcast on this last time, really kind of going into the nuances, but we have power and authority, but on the ground troop level, and we have power and authority to appeal to Christ and the angels in regards to principalities. But I believe that our, immediate hand-to-hand combat is with unclean spirits that actually inhabit people, right? To keep them in bondage and those kind of things. And when we're trying to affect change, I think in government and things of that nature, I think there's a different way of navigating, and that has to do with fasting, prayer, appealing to the Lord, coming together as community. Those and I think there's got to be a specific assignment from the Lord. It's not like, hey, I've given you the green light, go and bind all these principalities or whatever. I think if the Lord really kind of is calling you specifically to a particular region, I think that will be collective. I think there would be a lot of fasting and prayer in specifics over a territory. But the day-to-day helping people get free, I believe is really dealing with unclean spirits that we cast out.
Right.
We speak to, that we renounce, we cast out, and those kind of things. So,
can I tell you another story?
Yeah.
So I, some years back, decided to take a sabbatical, and it took me about 6 months to kind of power everything down. And I really felt like the Lord was like, no, I want you to take 6 months to a year, just kind of reset. I really felt dry spiritually.
Yeah.
And I remember, I felt like I didn't have a passion for the Word of God.
Yeah.
And, so powered things down, and actually kind of hibernated the David House Agency. And I was in my office in LA. The whole office was empty, and like the mover was moving the last box out, and I was in my office chair. It was like the only thing in the room, and I was looking out over the ocean, and I'm like freaked out.
Yeah.
It's just like, gosh, what am I going to do?
What am I gonna do?
You
Yeah.
know, and my phone rang, and it was this guy I'd never met. Hey, you know, I think his name was Eduardo or something. He's like, hey, you know, I heard about you through, you know, a friend of mine, and yeah, I belong to this ministry, and we let the Holy Spirit kind of highlight people that we think we'd like to invest in. And I'm like, it's nice to meet you. What do you guys do? And he's like, we just teach the Bible.
Okay.
And I'm like, well, okay, praise God. Like, I'm hearing from you, Lord, you know, This is awesome. You're not wasting any time. And so I met with him for coffee, and we took an hour. And he starts in Genesis 1 and he ends in, you know, last chapter, last verse in Revelation. And I had never, ever, ever had somebody like summarize God's redemptive plan in that way.
That's my passion.
And it lit a fire in me.
Yeah.
And I was like, you know, this is exactly what I needed.
Yeah.
Praise, you know. So, you know, I'm like, so who are you guys again? And he says, you know, the name or something. But I kind of felt like the Lord was like, don't do what you normally do. Don't go do diligence. Don't go research who they are.
Right.
Just let me guide you. Obviously, this is me. You got the phone call
Totally.
as the last box is leaving. It's the first 5 minutes of your sabbatical. You know, it's me.
Right.
So I'm like, all right, you know, I'm just going to give it to you, Lord. So I end up doing like, you know, 10 one-on-one like coffee date study times with this guy.
Okay.
And he actually was teaching me a lot of things and related to questions I had about Jesus' return and the end of the age and stuff that no one was, you know, talking about in the churches that I was going to in California at the time.
Right.
And my grandfather became a Christian because Israel became a nation. When he married my grandmother, he wasn't a believer. She was a devout Christian.
Right.
But he was aware of the prophecies that Israel would become a nation again. And he knew how impossible that was in the geopolitical context.
Yeah.
So when Israel became a nation again, 47, 48, he was like, the Bible must be true. And that actually is what God used him
To come to salvation.
to come to faith. And so it's in my bloodline.
Right.
A passion. And he was a butcher, and at night he would clear off the counters. And actually, a couple years ago, my father gifted me this 15-foot scroll that my grandfather made at night, you know, and it's basically a diagram of God's redemptive plan.
Yeah, I love it.
And so it's part of the baton on the lineage or whatever, is just a passion for that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
So this guy starts teaching me all these things, and I'm like, man, this is amazing. He's like, you're a great student. You know, like, I think you're ready to start coming to the class. So I start, you know, going to this class in Koreatown. And man, it's just like, these guys really know the word. It's like, this is vigorous Bible and, you know, Bible knowledge and Bible study. And we got homework, and it's just like, it's awesome.
Yeah.
And the teacher's a little weird, you know, he's like this Asian guy or something, but I'm just kind of like,
Content's good though.
yeah, the content's great. And, you know, the other people in the class were kind of like, they were all a little bit like
Different.
awkward or something.
Yeah.
But I just kind of felt like it's the Lord being like, just be humble, Eric.
Totally.
Are you learning the word? Yes or no? Yes. Okay. Then just shut your mouth and just let me be in control.
Right.
Okay. So I'm like 20 classes in. And one day the pastor releases a false teaching.
Ooh.
And he teaches the parable of, you know, the man who finds a treasure in the field. He goes and sells everything he has to buy the field. And the interpretation that he taught was the treasure is the actual real interpretation of God's mysterious word, and you have to go and leave your family and come and join the group of us who've been selected by God to know the truth.
Wow.
It was a cult.
Okay.
And it was like supernaturally in that moment, like God lifted these
Right.
like horse blinders that he had put on me.
Okay.
And I'm looking around and I'm just like, this is a cult. How in the world was I not able to see this?
Yeah.
And the Lord said, because if I this is what I felt the Lord say.
Okay.
Because if you had figured it out early on, you never would have come this deep in. And now you're deep enough that you have to do something about it.
Wow.
So I stayed in. And it was so funny because I was like, I felt like the Lord was like, I have one more case for you before it's time for you to take your sabbatical. And this is it.
Oh my gosh.
So I ended up befriending the main leader
Oh my gosh.
and just totally staying undercover, mapping out their entire operation, and found out that it was Shicheonji. Shicheonji is one of the fastest growing cults in the world. It's from South Korea.
Wow.
There's actually a guy who lives at the bottom of a mountain, claims that he is Christ incarnate who's returned. And they operate under different names in different countries. And they have lots of attorneys that represent them, and they're very well funded. And so I, eventually stopped coming, and they figured it out that I figured out who they were, and it turned into this whole thing. But I went to the leaders and talked to all these pastors in LA who were friends of mine.
Yeah.
I won't say who they were, but I was friends with a lot of the main pastors, and they all had the same response. Bro, like, you're so foolish. Like, you should have known. You should have never gotten involved with that. How could you not know? Why didn't you tell me about it? And I'm just kind of like, I'm trying to warn you because these people are coming to your churches and they're picking people off and inviting them to these little side Bible studies.
That's right.
And that's what they were doing.
Yeah.
And that's how the girl that introduced me to that guy who made me that phone call, that's how I had met her, like at the coffee bar. She was just one of the sisters at the church. But she had identified me as a person of influence and kind of a leader in the Christian community in the west of Los Angeles.
Okay.
And it turns out that group, that cult, had not been able to really penetrate any of the churches like west of the 405 in LA.
Because they were exposed. But you had to get in there.
So I got in and, I found like the group of, Korean Christians who God had sort of like assigned the dismantling of this cult to. And, and I tried to, and everyone ignored me.
Wow.
Then Nicky Gumbel, who's a very respected leader in London, his church is called Holy Trinity Brompton, HTB. He published an open letter warning the world about this cult. Apparently it had got up in HTB and like wreaked havoc.
Wow.
So he issued a letter, and then all the leaders in LA started issuing letters and newsletters. And so like the news went out to all the churches, but they had a head start because of all the intel that I'd given them.
Wow.
And the girl that had given my name and number to the guy who called me, I ended up getting in touch with her family, telling them, what was going on. And they actually ended up hiring the David House Agency to go rescue her out of the cult.
Wow.
And it was, so we got to interface with law enforcement, and it was like a whole wild thing. But that was, I guess, an example, as you're talking, of how like maybe the Lord sovereignly wanted to make a move on like a regional chessboard. But it wasn't because of my skill set or anything. He just blinded me and just literally used me.
Here, I think this is important because Jesus said a little leaven leavens the whole lump.
Right.
And we got to be wise because the enemy will use 98% truth.
Yeah.
And then throw the twist in there to destroy the whole thing.
Right.
And you were able to go, okay, let me hear this truth until boom, nope, that's leaven. But it's important to know that leaven.
everything they taught was spot on,
Yeah.
amazing revelation.
Yeah.
Like an apple in a crown, the Proverbs calls it. Like it was just perfectly fit for the
Yeah.
questions that I had. And then in an instant, he released a false teaching, and my spirit was like,
Boom.
no, something's not right. And then he
Yeah.
kept going, and then the Lord supernaturally just,
Yeah.
it's like I saw the circuit board,
Yeah.
and then I started digging. Yeah, bro.
Yeah. I mean, I think the more, the closer that we get, I think, to the end, like I talked about this deception thing, it's really important. And I think this is also why the Lord is purifying spirit-filled churches, Bible churches, and uniting, because you have to be very versed in scripture. You got to know the Bible.
Right.
But then you also have to be completely surrendered and be willing to be led by the Spirit and the power of the gospel. That means
Right.
speaking in tongues. That means casting demons out. So, man, I think if discipleship has to go up to a whole nother level, especially the closer we get to the return of Christ, man.
And there's this thing about just, I feel like a lot of, I'll just speak to men in the United States haven't been tested.
That's really good.
I don't wish that upon anybody, but it's like, there is something about being on the other side of
Yeah.
a trial, and, I never doubt God.
Right.
And I don't say that as in a self-righteous way. I never, ever, ever doubt or question him, because I have been taken to the edge and hung over the edge.
That's right.
And he was still faithful.
That's it.
And I made a pact, and I said, use me. Like, I have questions, and there's times where I'm like, God, where are you? And I don't
Right.
understand a lot of the behavior of some of my Christian brothers and sisters.
Right.
I see a lot of people that are being deceived because they're getting their theology from worship music
100%.
or from snackable content on
Right.
social media, or they're spending more time watching a self-appointed YouTube pastor
Yeah.
than actually being in the Word.
Yeah. Investing in 2 years of Bible school or learning the word. I agree, man. It's unfortunate. It breaks my heart, bro, because I think most men, especially in America, are at that place you were at before you went through your ordeal, where, you got the career, looking for the woman, the whole thing,
Yep.
and finding their identity in those things that God will bless you with those things, but he said, seek first the kingdom and his righteousness, and all
Right.
the other stuff he's going to add unto. But I don't know what it's going to take, man, for men to wake up, because it's imperative that men lead in the kingdom. So I mean, hey, I'd be the first to go, God, use me in any kind of revival in getting men to understand their identity, their true destiny, their purpose, in the kingdom of God, bro.
And that's why, like, if you look at the scriptures, a lot of the persecution is not violence and, disease. Like that, of course, has happened. Most of it
Right.
is actually accusation. And, he's the great accuser.
That's it.
And so I think that's where I'm, you asked that question, like that's where I'm like, man, so many people are so quickly, and a lot of it is them actually reacting to pre-existing trauma.
Yeah. 100%.
I get that. I have a lot of grace for that.
Yeah.
We're all walking around with
Yeah.
a preloaded file of stuff. And
Wounds.
so, but it's going to get harder and harder to really discern
Yeah.
what is true and what is not true.
That's right.
Right and wrong is simple, but what's true and what's not true, that's the part that gets harder and harder and harder, especially with the digital age that we're living in.
Yeah.
And people are losing a lot of critical thinking
Yeah.
skills and abilities. And that's, some of the people that I never would have imagined would have ended up believing some of the stuff they do. I can't even talk to them about it, because if I do, they're just
Wow.
going to be like, Eric, you're the one who's lost your mind.
Right. Scary, bro. So, but we have hope, right?
As I'm saying, I love these conversations. You know, I feel like a lot of times believers are like, let's not talk about the works of darkness. You know, we're just magnifying. My hope's in angels, bro. Like, it doesn't bother me at all let's decode what the enemy's up to.
Yeah, that's just a cop out.
That's
That
kind of
really
how I
is.
feel.
I mean, Jesus talked about a lot of things that most people would call negative, but yeah, you're not glorifying the enemy by exposing the enemy. You're actually glorifying God by exposing the enemy. Yeah. So I don't know. I don't get into all that. I just,
So I literally, when I was on the plane this morning, wrote like a draft of a prologue, which is actually right in line with what we're talking about.
Yes.
Can I read it
so
to you?
that followed my question. Like,
Yeah.
what are you passionate about right now? Right. So,
yeah, it's this topic. And actually I don't know. I wrote the prologue to a book,
okay.
And this working title I have is Enduro.
Okay.
Like, it's kind of a reference to endurance, but
yeah,
you would be able to, it'd be mutually intelligible in Spanish. Pressure has a way of revealing what we really believe. Not what we say we believe, not what we post about, but is what is actually woven into the fabric of our lives. Unseen yet unshakable. In the quiet before the storm, faith feels simple. We sing about it, we declare it, we wear it like a badge. But when the storm comes and the weight of crisis threatens to crush us, faith becomes something else. It becomes a battle. I've known that kind of pressure that turns certainty into questions and peace into panic. I've seen people abandon their convictions when the cost of keeping them grew too high. I fought to hold on to the invisible when the invisible world was falling apart. Maybe you have too. This book is not about theory. It's about survival. It's about endurance, enduro, the long obedience in the same direction, when quitting would be easier and compromise would be applauded. But endurance is not just about standing firm. It's about seeing clearly. Pressure doesn't just crush, it confuses. In times of shaking, lies often sound like truth, and truth often sounds offensive. Without discernment, even the sincere can be deceived. We are living in a time when deception is not only possible, it's inevitable. Scripture warns that before the end, even the elect would be at risk of being led astray.
That's right.
Not by obvious evil, but by a counterfeit good, a false justice movement, by persuasive words, miraculous signs, popular movements, and solutions that demand our loyalty at the cost of our soul. If we can't recognize deception now, how will we stand when the ultimate deceiver comes? How will we make the right decisions when choosing rightly could cost everything? Pressure will force us to decide whom we really trust. The voice of the crowd, the voice of fear, or the voice of the shepherd. This is the time for roots that run deep, for a loyalty that no storm can uproot. If you're walking through fire, you're not alone. If you're carrying questions that you're afraid to voice, you are not beyond hope. If you are struggling to stand, you are right where endurance is born. It's not about who's the fastest. Victory belongs to the one who does not give up and does not lose sight of the truth. This is a call to hold the line, to keep your faith, not just when it's easy, but when everything you have is left, to see through the lies, to endure to the very end. Let's begin.
Oh, Sammy, bro. That's
Enduro.
so good, dude. And I always say that I really believe the number one characteristic that God is breathed into us is faithfulness. You can have all the gifts, you can do all these things. I mean, at the root of it, God is love. Love is about faithfulness and loyalty. I just think, and you're right, pressure will really reveal where your loyalty lies, where your faithfulness lies.
That's
in
right.
regards to the Lord. So, bro, I love you, man. Let's
Love you
go
too.
hang out.
Thank you.
We'll do this again.
Okay.
Soul Shaker Podcast. Thank you guys for tuning in with us. See you next time.